Hi, good afternoon, and welcome to another Webinar Wednesdays. I'm Kat, I'm the Marketing Manager here at Virtue, and today we'll be discussing Cyber Essentials Plus. Now, a bit of admin just before we get going. More than welcome to ask questions. We encourage those at any time during the event via the chat window. We will wait till the end to answer those in our Q&A section though. And just on that note, if you think of a question after the event, please still feel free to send it to us and ask for our advice on that note. You can feel free to send it to marketing@virtuetechnologies.co.uk and we'll be sure to follow that up with you. I'll also pop that email address into the chat window for any of you so you can just copy and paste it, make your lives a little bit easier. And I'm also going to pop the ebook that accompanies this session. So Virtue have published our first ebook just earlier this week, I think. No, a couple of weeks ago. And that is about Cyber Essentials Plus, somewhat about our journey there, and also about all of the things that you need to know to be Cyber Essentials Plus ready. And that's actually been written by Will, who is our guest on today's session. In Virtue to discuss Cyber Essentials Plus with you, basically because he's been key to us getting our accreditation originally and keeping it for the number of years that we have. So without further ado, I will pass over to Will.
Today I want to talk about cyber assurance and how, as IT people, we provide an assurance to our SLT, to our Board of Governors, to our Board of Directors, to our head teachers, that we're taking every step possible to keep our schools safe and secure from cyber attack. It's a sad fact that there's been an increase in the last 6 months of 615% in the number of cyber attacks in schools, and that is higher than other industries. So for some reason, schools are being targeted, and so much so that for the first time, cybersecurity really makes an entry into the latest version of the Academy Trust handbook, which was issued on the 1st of September, or enacted on the 1st of September. And in that document, it talks about people, or asking for schools for consideration and action about cybersecurity. In fact, in the introduction to that document, which is written by Baroness Berridge, the Parliamentary Under Secretary of State for Schools, she talks about cybersecurity. Now, for her to do that in the introduction of the Academy Trust Handbook means that this is something that's really creeping up the agenda. And we all know the DFE and the National Cyber Security Centre have issued a number of guidance notes and recommendations over the last 12 months or so, specifically to schools about cybersecurity. So it is something that's really on the agenda. And whilst today I'm going to talk about that, we're going to talk about how we provide that assurance. There's a programme called Cyber Essentials, which we'll talk about a bit later on. Today I want to start with just talking about how we do provide that assurance, and Cyber Essentials will actually be quite a big part of that, but I'll come to that towards the end. So to provide that assurance, there are 3 key areas, in my view, that need to be examined and in place. The first one is policy and process, the second one is culture, and the third one is technology. And we'll pick those off in turn. So policy and process first. It's really important that every school has some kind of IT acceptable use policy, a computer policy, or whatever you call it. And thankfully, I think most schools have got this. I think I've not seen a school that hasn't got this for many years now. It's a regular document we see, and that talks about the expectations that the school has on the users, on how they're going to use that computer equipment. It tells people not to share passwords. It tells people that they're not allowed to do certain things and they are allowed to do other certain things, and that will vary from school to school. But generally, it's a really good document that expresses from the school's perspective what the expectation is of users using IT equipment. If you've not got one of those, and I don't think that there is a school in the country that hasn't got one of those, then definitely get one. And if you have got one, make sure you review it on a regular basis. But heavily linked to policy is process. And there are lots of IT processes that can operate around cybersecurity. Things like your backup process, things like your new user process, things like your change of password process. And they're all really important to help provide a secure environment for users and therefore reduce that risk of cyber attack. If we pick a couple of those off, ones that sometimes may create a bit of a problem. So from a cybersecurity angle, password resets. It's very common for people to turn up to the IT office and say, "Hi, I'm Mary and I've forgotten my password." And the IT person will just reset that password for them. But if they don't know that person, or that's a new member of staff that's not been to the IT office before, how do they know that that is actually Mary? So do we check the badge to make sure that that is actually that person? Because otherwise we could potentially be giving somebody access to somebody else's account, and therefore maybe a data breach, but also exposing the school to some kind of cyber issue. Secondly, another issue I see quite regularly is leavers. Managing leavers is really important, because what I see sometimes is people leave the school, teachers or support staff will leave the school, IT will not be informed, and then some years later their accounts will still be live on the system, and potentially that member of staff that's left could still be coming back in on a regular basis, looking for a little bit of data, taking it, and potentially just exposing the school by having an account that's open that maybe it's that dormant that no one knows about, and it's an access route into that school. So having a tight process around leavers is key, and there are lots of other areas where we need good process to ensure that our schools are secure. That kind of leads on to that second point which I wanted to talk about, which is culture. Having an awareness and a culture of cybersecurity across the whole school is really important. If all our users understand the threats and understand what to look out for, and we don't want to go overboard, but giving people that background awareness, when they open an email that says please pay this account, being able to recognise if that's a phishing attack or something very suspicious, go to this website and give me your credentials. You know, if people are doing that on a regular basis, you're going to be wide open to some kind of cyber attacks. But if people can identify those issues before they do anything, when they see that email, then it's really going to help minimise that chance of attack. So training and awareness is really important. Unfortunately, the National Cybersecurity Centre has got a significant amount of material, but training material, videos, posters, specifically designed for schools to help train and make awareness of cybersecurity in schools. And I recommend you go to their website and take a look at some of that stuff, because it is very, very useful. The third area, of course, is technology. And possibly the biggest area where we need a really good degree of best practice in that technology space. So I'll talk about some different areas of the technology now where we can kind of make some changes or make sure we've got good process in place. Thinking about our perimeter, thinking about our general environment, our client devices, thinking about how we manage our users, thinking about our data and how we access that data. So let's start off with the perimeter. That's the first place to start. It's the most logical thing to do. Most people will think perimeter, internet, okay, I just need a firewall. And that's right, you do need a firewall. You need a good firewall, and you need a firewall that's in line with government guidance. There's some quite strong government DFE guidance on organisations that you can use. There is a list on the DFE's website, and we can use that to make sure we get the right products. So the firewall will need to be pretty well buttoned down so that it keeps us safe. And if you're not comfortable in doing that, please bring in a third party to help you, because it's one of the most important features of your school to keep you safe and secure. And most ISPs, when they provide their service, will actually provide that firewall and will support it for you. And if they don't, please do find a third party that can help you with it. But that firewall needs to be reviewed on a regular basis. We need to make sure that the rules that you've got on that firewall are appropriate and that they're not no longer being used, so that we can turn them off or whatever. But that firewall just needs to be managed on a continuous basis. The second aspect is filters, and filters are really important, because not only do they keep our users from not going to the wrong websites, because obviously we need to provide that appropriateness of the website that a user is using. We also have the ability with those filters to stop people going to websites that may have been compromised in the past or currently. So if you go to a website that's been infected, you could automatically download a nasty piece of malware that does something on your network, and you don't want to do that. So having that software in place in the filter is really important. Second thing is environment. So thinking about the devices we've got in the network. There's lots of computers in our schools now, lots of mobile devices in our schools, making sure they're all managed, making sure they've got the right antivirus, anti-ransomware products on them, making sure they're up to date. And that's a really important part, actually, up to date, because most software and hardware has two kinds of updates. There'll be feature updates, which are generally optional, and security updates, which are not optional. And I would recommend best practices. You want to get security updates out within 14 days of release. A lot of schools also have one-to-one laptop schemes or one-to-one iPad schemes or similar. And it's important with those devices that they're managed, and some kind of mobile device manager, MDM as it's called, such as Microsoft Intune or some other product, is going to be really useful to help manage those and keep those devices nice and safe. When we talk about users, obviously we talked about policy and process earlier, but we need to make sure that users are educated in the software that they're using, how to use it, and we've got that cybersecurity awareness rolling through. And then finally, thinking about our data, because it's our data that is really at risk, and that's what people really want. They don't want to take our computers as much so these days, they want to take our data. So how do we secure that data? We're all familiar with things like two-factor authentication. When we go to our bank, we have to not only put our details in, our credentials, we may have to use our mobile phones as a second point to click a little button to say, yes, it's me, and without your phone you can't get into your bank. And we've all been there, and it's quite inconvenient if you left your phone downstairs and you're upstairs and you're trying to access the bank. But two-factor authentication now is available for services that are on site in your school and services that are in the cloud, such as Microsoft Office 365 or Google G Suite. So strongly recommend you use two-factor authentication. The other thing that we need to think about for our security aspect is backups. Now the DFE have really recommended recently that we use something called air-gapped backup. And air-gapped backup is really important. And what that does is, in the event that our network is compromised by a ransomware, which will go off and encrypt our data, it stops that backup data from being encrypted. So our backup data is stored, or a copy of our backup data is stored in an environment that is not accessible live from our network. So in the event that something does get encrypted and our network becomes compromised, we do have a safe copy of our backup data. And that is something that the DFE have strongly recommended recently to schools, that they have air-gapped backup. I think that really covers my general overview of what we need to do for cyber assurance. But the Cyber Essentials program, which is a government program run by the National Cybersecurity Centre, is a really good program, and will definitely provide assurance for your school. I think I'll take any questions now, so over to Kat.
Okay, well, thanks very much, Will. And I think now that means we're ready for our Q&A. So we've not had any questions in so far into the chat window, but I'm going to give you guys a little bit of time to digest everything Will said. So pop your questions in there, get typing, and while we wait for any of those to come through, Will, I have some pre-event questions for you. So as I mentioned before, any pre-event questions that you have, or any questions that you have after the event, you can send through to marketing@virtuetechnologies.co.uk. And that way we can either ask them live if you sent them pre-event, or we can follow up with you and let you know after the event. So our first pre-event question is, I looked at Cyber Essentials a while ago. Mobile devices, tablets and phones weren't in the scope. Is that still the case? Because your book, that's nice, they've read your book well. Your book infers that they're now considered.
That's a really good question. So previously, Cyber Essentials was kind of accredited by a number of different bodies, CREST, IASME, and a few others. And what happened about 18 months, 2 years ago was they were all consolidated into one framework, and that's run by now an organisation called IASME, and they're the accreditation body. Previously, it was possible to take various aspects of your IT services out of scope of the Cyber Essentials accreditation, and one popular thing that got taken out was mobile devices, because sometimes people didn't have a full grip on mobile devices maybe, so they would just take them out of scope. Unfortunately now there is not the ability to take mobile devices, so that's phones, iPads, other tablets, etc., out of scope of the accreditation. So you will have to think about mobile devices. The updates will need to be applied. You'll need to have a good list of them, antivirus where feasible. All that kind of stuff will need to be in place on your mobile devices. And sorry, you can no longer take them out of equipment, straight out of scope.
Okay, so thank you very much. I hope that answers your question. We're Cyber Essentials accredited now. Sorry, this is question 2. We're Cyber Essentials accredited now. What's the difference, and will it be a lot of work to add the plus?
Right, yes, Cyber Essentials versus Cyber Essentials Plus. So there's a really simple differentiation between the two accreditations. So the first one, Cyber Essentials, is a self-assessment effectively. So you basically you fill in the forms yourself, and then those forms go off to your accreditor. They get reviewed, and then you will get the accreditation or not. It basically relies on honesty. The Cyber Essentials Plus accreditation is slightly different. It's exactly the same accreditation. You fill in the same forms, but this time the accreditor will come to you, and he will then, or she will then, look at your environment, and basically you'll have to evidence the things that you say that you've done. So, for example, if you say that all our laptops are running the latest version of Windows 10, then they'll do a vulnerability scan across a sample of your laptops to make sure that they're running the latest version of Windows 10. So little things like that. They'll want to see policies. They'll want evidence of your assessment, and that's the only difference. That little difference can make it a lot harder, obviously, because you've got somebody coming in to externally audit you, and that can create a little bit of pressure. But if you're good with getting the Cyber Essentials, then you'll be okay with getting the Cyber Essentials Plus. Any more questions, Kat?
This is the final pre-event question, and it may even be your final question since we've not had any through in the chat window yet. So we're a small MAT. Do we have to be accredited? Is there a size of MAT when it becomes a necessity?
So, do you have to be accredited? Well, at the moment, the only people that have to be accredited for Cyber Essentials are FE and HE. And it's part of their, they won't get funding unless they've got the Cyber Essentials accreditation. Actually, very soon to be Cyber Essentials Plus is a requirement for further and higher education. In schools at the moment, in primary and secondary schools, then there is no mandate that you've got to do Cyber Essentials. It's something for you to consider. It's something that is recommended to give you that assurance that everything is in hand and you're doing things correctly, and you're taking every step possible to maintain that awareness and that security against cyber attack. But no, there is no mandate in primary and secondary, but there is in HEFE.
Okay, and we've not had any more questions, so I'm going to say that this is the end of another Webinar Wednesday. Thank you very much, Will, for your time, and thank you all for watching, whether it's live or on our YouTube playback. Really appreciate you getting in touch and supporting us.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for listening, and cheers.
We'll be back next week with another Webinar Wednesday, and I will hope to see you there. Okay, thanks everybody. Bye-bye.